At 56, after laying to rest the love of his life, Thomas didn't book a holiday. He wasn't searching for peace. He was searching for silence, the kind you find when you vanish completely. So he packed, not for a getaway, but for an escape. No forwarding address, no plan to return, just him, his grief, and the vast, frozen emptiness of a Norwegian glacier. Up there, a relentless cold, something began to thaw, not the ice but something buried deeper. Pulse, a will, a flicker of purpose. And against all odds, he came back. Not just breathing, but living. This is the story of a man who journeyed to the edge of the world to find the edge of himself and discovered that even in loss, there is life. Thomas Raines was a retired marine biologist, a quiet soul, methodical, gentle, the kind of man who found joy in fixing old fishing rods no one else cared to salvage. Each morning, he brewed coffee so strong it could wake the sea. He liked it black. No sugar, just like the Arctic winds that swept through his tiny cabin. He lived alone in Longyearbyen, a remote Norwegian town where polar night stretches for months. A place where the sun disappears and the cold becomes a kind of constant heartbeat. But Thomas never minded the darkness. Not when Claire was there. Claire, his wife of 28 years, was the warmth that lit his winters. She laughed easily, read poetry aloud while he sorted tackle boxes, and left handwritten notes in coat pockets, just because she was the fire in his frozen world. And when she died, something in Thomas froze too, something deeper than skin, something no coat could ever warm again. When cancer took her, the silence wasn't just outside, it moved in. The snow, the cold, the long empty nights became mirrors of his grief. One morning in early February, before the sun had even hinted at returning, Thomas left a note on the kitchen table for words, written in his familiar, careful hand. Gone to see the ice. Don't worry. There was no farewell, no explanation, just that. He packed lightly, a worn canvas rucksack, his asthma inhaler, a thermos of coffee, and a single photograph: Claire, smiling beneath a wool hat, wind-blown and bright-eyed. That image was his compass. Then he stepped out into the cold. Locals in Longyearbyen had warned him for years, never go alone to Ostfana. The glacier was treacherous, creaking, shifting, riddled with hidden crevices and sudden storms. But Thomas wasn't looking for safety. He wasn't looking for anything really. No phone, no GPS, no plan to return. Just the sound of his boots crunching into the snow and the silence ahead. A silence so deep, it swallowed even thought. Was he chasing stillness? Or maybe an end? Only the ice knew for sure, and Thomas, in that moment, didn't care which he found first. The first 2 days were silent, not peaceful silent, the kind of silence that hums in your ears and buries your thoughts beneath layers of white. Bitter winds howled across the glacier, sculpting the ice like ancient hands. Snow fell sideways, stinging his face, freezing into the corners of his eyes. But Thomas walked on, step after careful step, alone, untouched, unseen. By the third day, his breath had grown ragged, his limbs ached, but the glacier wasn't finished with him yet. Without warning, the ice cracked beneath his feet, a jagged groan that split the world in two. He plunged downward, swallowed by blue light and cold silence. The fall wasn't far, but it was violent. His side slammed into a shelf of ice. Something snapped sharp, deep, a riv, maybe two. He lay there for what felt like hours, half buried in snow, body pulsing with pain, lungs straining against the cold. And then, from somewhere deep inside, he screamed, not in fear, but in fury. I'm still here. The sound echoed off the ice walls, raw, defiant, alive, and something flickered, not the light above him, not even warmth, but memory. Fragments, fragile but fierce, began to surface. Claire's laugh echoing down the narrow hallway of their home, the way she tucked her cold feet under him at night and smiled like it was a secret. Her favorite jazz records, always a little too loud on Sunday mornings. They weren't ghosts. They weren't grief. They were reasons. Reasons to move. Reasons to rise. He hadn't come to die. He just hadn't known that yet. On the fifth morning, Thomas stood still, breath shallow, limbs trembling on a ridge of solid ice. Below him, nothing but clouds, a pale sea of white that stretched to the edge of the world. Above him, a sky still cloaked in Arctic gray. It was the highest he had climbed, and the furthest he had ever been from anyone. His body was failing, cracked rib, blood in his spit, fingers numb and stiff from frostbite. But his mind was clear, and then, softly, almost like an apology, he whispered, "She wouldn't want me to end it here. Not in the cold, not in silence, not without saying goodbye." So he turned around. One aching step at a time, he began the long walk back. No map, no trail, just instinct, and the quiet rhythm of survival, a pulse of purpose, beating just loud enough to hear. 17 hours. That's how long he walked through gale winds, over black ice, across terrain that should have killed him twice. He didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't let himself feel the pain, just kept moving, as if Claire were just ahead, waiting. And then, just as his legs buckled at the edge of town, it happened. A sliver of gold broke across the horizon, the first sunrise in weeks. The sky opened soft, pink, alive, and Thomas, frostbitten and fractured, stood in its light, not as the man who went looking for an end, but as the one who found a reason to begin again. Thomas didn't climb the glacier to conquer it. He wasn't chasing adventure or adrenaline or anything worth bragging about. He climbed it to face something far colder than the ice beneath his feet, the quiet weight that had been trying to bury him from the inside out. It wasn't a battle against nature, it was a reckoning with himself. And nature, unforgiving, immense, and brutally honest, didn't kill him, reminded him he was still part of something vast and alive, still capable of pain, yes, but also capable of choosing to feel it and move forward anyway. Today, Thomas teaches survival classes to young hikers who've never known real silence. And before each track, he tells them the same thing: the ice won't break you, hiding from life will. He doesn't talk about heroism, he talks about presence, about how sometimes you don't need to start over in a new place. You just need to walk far enough into your pain to understand why it hurts, because deep inside that glacier, in the coldest, most forgotten corner of the earth, Thomas found what he thought he'd lost forever, a reason to live again. And in the heart of the ice, he found it.